Everybody, welcome to today's episode of the Game of Content. I am joined by my friend and colleague, Iceman. On this episode of the Game of Content, we are discussing the cultural impact of Counterstrike and turning your passion into your career.
Good morning, and welcome to the Black Mesa Transit System.
I call Iceman super dad, professional esports player, and super Twitch streamer and growing YouTuber. Just a little bit of context for you guys. Iceman began his relationship with gaming when he picked up his first controller at the young age of 2. He hasn't put it down since, giving him the position of being a well-deserved authority figure in the gaming scene. His passion for gaming led him to a satisfying career in esports, where he competed in various Counter-Strike tournaments and charities over the past 15 years. That's crazy. When I saw that, I really felt old. At the present moment, Iceman is now a successful Twitch streamer with a growing presence on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, where he focuses his content on RPG, FPS, and educational gaming. When he's not gaming, Iceman takes good care of his Corgi pup, Link, and makes sure to spend lots of time with his family, including his most recent addition to his gaming family, his 1-year-old baby girl. Whether it's on YouTube, TikTok, or even just lurking in his streams on Twitch, I can always count on the fact that I'm going to learn something new. I always learn something from his content. In my perspective, if you can teach someone else a new concept, strategy, or just an idea, all while having fun doing it, you're in the right place in life. So today, I'm thrilled to have Iceman on the show to talk about the cultural impact of Counter-Strike, as well as turning your passion into your career. It's clear his relationship with gaming has positively shaped the person he is today. I can't wait to hear his perspective and hopefully share his story with others and his wisdom. Iceman, how are you today?
Hello, I'm good. That was a very generous introduction.
You liked it?
I like it. I liked it a lot. It was good. But thank you.
Oh, amazing.
Thank
no
you for
worries. How was so you were telling me a little bit earlier before we recorded about your stream today, and you were playing League of Legends. And so right now you're kind of jumping in between games every now and then. Is there any game that you're sticking with right now?
Yeah, the big game, the handful of games I'm sticking with are Escape from Tarkov. The wipe is coming soon. As you're recording this, wipe is actually in 2 days, so that'll be big.
That's exciting.
Yep. So a lot of Escape from Tarkov, a little bit of Destiny, and then just some other things sprinkled in here and there. League of Legends was a charity incentive, or else there's no chance I would have been playing it right now without that.
That's really interesting. But that shows how you really interact with your community and you give them incentives, right?
Yeah, I try to as best I can. There are much more creative people that I know out there that can do that super well, but I do the best I can.
At least you try, right? I think that's the most important thing, is that connecting with your audience and making it known to them that you see them and you're together in this with them. And I think that's a really uniting factor that all Twitch streamers especially have with their audience.
I agree.
So, Iceman, I ask everybody on the show this simple question, and the reason I do is because it's such an umbrella term. It doesn't really have a one-size-fits-all definition. So I'd love to hear your perspective. In your words, what is a content creator?
Yeah, as you said, a lot of things. Someone who is pretty much an entertainer. And entertainment comes in a lot of different factors of comedy, education. You're just literally enjoying someone doing something that you also enjoy or that you want to learn about. So that could be a casual player watching a professional player play a game. That could be someone that teaches you literally anything. So YouTube is the #1 place to go to learn how to do something that you don't know how to do. So it's literally just pretty much anything that you want to share with other people in a audio or visual format. I would say is content creation.
I love it. I love that definition. And because what I hear the most important thread of that definition you gave is it's uniting people. It's bringing people together. It's connecting others. And I think that's such a privilege that we have with the internet and the technology available to us now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you spent so much of your career so far playing Counterstrike, and I think it's really so much. I think it's interesting, you know, looking at your career when I was doing research about you, and like I knew that you did some Counterstrike. I know that you played a lot of FPS games, but what's so fascinating is all the games we have today would be nowhere, if not even the caliber of the game they are, without Counterstrike. So I want to talk about Counterstrike, and I just want to share some anecdotal experience. When I was a kid, it's so funny. I'm just remembering being so small and looking over my brother's shoulder as he was playing Counterstrike, and he downloaded it onto our retro, I think it was Windows 95, when our parents weren't home. And so it's just like, the graphics back then were so different compared to what...
Oh, they were terrible.
I know, and it's like, you know, and there's questions we'll get into later, but they were beyond unrealistic, you know, and
But Counter-Strike graphics for back then were pretty good. Like, you looked at that, you're like, oh man, this looks
because
great.
Half-Life's graphics were like cutting edge at that point, so that would make complete sense. Yeah. To give our viewers some context, if you just know Counter-Strike by its name and you have no understanding of the history, Counter-Strike started as two college kids just messing around with Valve's game engine. Valve is the developer that created Half-Life. And it just began to have a ripple effect into the competitive gaming world because Valve picked up Counter-Strike from these college students, purchased the intellectual rights to it, and then I believe in 1999, they published Counter-Strike as we know today. So it's a game that is rippled into any competitive shooter, any PvP player base, especially, you know, as you and I have played Destiny a lot, the PvP player playground is like that started in Counter-Strike, and that was what was most fascinating to me. It capitalized on the round-based objective system, team-based gameplay, and a between-play economy gamers had never experienced to this degree. So, on to you now. Iceman, in your opinion and experience, what has been the most important thing you've seen change within the series from the first release to the most recent release?
That's a really good question. There's a lot of things that have changed. So I started playing back in beta, way back. And I've
so
continued
99?
to play. Yeah. And I've continued to play all the way through CS:GO. I still hop in every now and then.
Wonderful. It's so nostalgic, right?
Yeah. The only time that I just kind of said I'm done with it, and I had a lot of other things going on, like this when I got into college and started that whole thing, was Source. So I kind of stopped playing around Source time and picked it back up in CS:GO.
Okay.
But there's so much that has changed.
Well, and the technology too, right? Like I just think when I wrote this question down, I was like, this is such a loaded question.
Yeah, and I honestly think my answer, and this is coming from the like competitive professional scene, is the level of event and a level of competition has skyrocketed from what it used to be.
Okay.
I remember the first CPL, the Cyber Athlete Professional League. That was in a big warehouse. It was a big quote unquote event, but it was still only like a few hundred to a couple thousand people that would attend. And the prize pool, I think, was 100,000, which was pretty big back then. Yeah. But I mean, if you look at tournaments today, they're in huge arenas.
They're actual arenas, yeah. They're
broadcast to hundreds of thousands, millions of people at its peak. And the prize pools were millions of dollars. And I don't think there'd be events like that today if it wasn't for his name was Angel. That was like the main guy that started CPL, and then WCG, the World Cyber Athlete Gaming. I can't remember the acronyms off the top of my head. But those two were the big ones that I think really set off all the other events for other games. They kind of set the bar for high tier competitive esports events before that was even really a thing in people's minds. They were still dragging giant CRT monitors into these things, and the tables had to be like reinforced because of the weight that was on them from all of these computers.
Yeah, they were huge. They had the bulb monitors.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
Each monitor weighed like 150 pounds. It was insane.
Like that. I have this huge smile on my face right now because I'm just remembering growing up in that atmosphere. We got our first so I think you're a few years older than me. I'm a 91 baby. I think you're mid 80s.
I'm 86. Yep.
Yeah, there we go. But what's interesting is those few years of difference gives us two very, very different perspectives, right? Because you were able to play and interact with this technology that was evolving. Meanwhile, I was quite restricted by my parents were like, video games I don't remember what it was, but it was just like video games cause violence. But that was when Grand Theft Auto was starting to come out, and parents, there was a lot of shit happening in the world that made them question what their children were taking in. We'll touch on that a bit more later. Do you still play Counterstrike? Why or why not? I
do. And it's just one of those things where I still have a lot of buddies that I've met through the years that play, and it's a good way to keep in touch with them. And I love playing the game. Like, it's one of the only games ever that I've played, and I've put tens of thousands of hours into over 16 plus years, that I could hop back in and still enjoy myself.
It's almost, it feels like almost like, this sounds kind of like Hallmark movie-ish, but it's almost like you're coming home. Like it's like a place that you grew up in.
A little bit, yeah. And I tried playing Valorant. Like, Valorant's kind of the next evolution of Counter-Strike. They picked a lot of people that helped develop a lot of key parts of Counter-Strike, and Riot hired them and gave them a lot of money, and they've developed Valorant. And they've done an amazing job of doing it, but it's not the same game as Counter-Strike. It doesn't feel the same to me.
What's the difference, you think?
Ability use. They adapted a lot more abilities, like Overwatch and those types of games have been doing. So they kind of put the League of Legends aspect into it through abilities. And granted, a lot of those abilities people say are like smokes, flashes, mollies, and stuff like that in Counter-Strike. They're not. It's not even close to the same. Like, smokes, flashes, and Counter-Strike are much less of an impact than someone's ultimate that they can shoot someone through a wall or see him with wall hack.
So that recovery time is a lot more impactful compared to Counter-Strike, where it would be like maybe a second you'd lose of time in the TTK.
Yeah. It's just it's the same concept of a game. It is a 5v5 tactical shooter. But it's just a whole different feel because they put a lot of different Overwatch and League elements into there.
Gotcha. Okay, so. I understand. So as I said earlier, I was in a really strict household. So my family was very religious. It was very Catholic,
Same.
Right? We were kids of the 90s. We had parents that you went to church every Sunday. And my brother and I took in through entertainment was very heavily monitored. But, you had the odd time where you were allowed to watch The Simpsons or something like it just for a special occasion. But and that's dating me now, where watching The Simpsons was a special occasion.
I love The Simpsons back in the day. South Park was the big one.
Oh,
if you
South Park
you were doing well.
South Park was wake up in the middle of the night and sneak in and turn on the Comedy Network when your parents were asleep. That was what I used to do. Yeah. And South Park is so funny too. Like, The Simpsons is just like shut your brain off comedy. South Park is a thinker. But that's the generation we grew up in. You didn't have instant access to content. My parents definitely were of the mindset that video games cause violence. And I remember there was one time where my brother's friend had snuck over a PlayStation 2, I believe. And he wasn't San Andreas, it was the one before that. Oh my God. Anyway, it was a GTA game. And Miami Vice. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So we brought Miami Vice over, and it was like this big deal that I told on my brother.
Oh, you told on him?
I did. I was in grade 4.
No.
But I remember that was like a betrayal that a sister I've held on to forever, because it's and it was just like, it was such a cool game because I'd never seen that before, where it was like an open world. And I never personally, I played San Andreas. I was like, when I was getting older, I was able to pick up the old black Xbox and play San Andreas. But that was when I really started gaming. But that Counter-Strike was not allowed in our house. It was that was like a swear word. My mom knew what it was. She was like, nope, no. But also, to be a little bit more clear about that perspective, she was raised under a veteran from World War II. So anything with violence, I think it was something to do with that as well, where it's like not just the media and the public discourse about violence in video games. It was also, she didn't want to show us that, but I play Destiny, and it's a PvP game, and I have fun, and I showed my mom that, and she was just like, oh, I don't like that you're shooting things.
Yeah, I can understand that for sure.
Yeah. So you're a new parent, and I would love to hear your perspective about what you think. What is your opinion on video games, our children that are being raised in this generation, and what's to come from that?
Well, I mean, this generation kind of shows off how you can actually make a career off video games and being good at video games. When I was coming up, I had to literally convince my parents that this is something that I could do and it made sense, but they still didn't believe me.
How did you do that? I want to hear that story if you can.
So my sister's 14 years older than me, and I got to do a lot more things than she did.
Oh no. Yeah, the older child syndrome, right?
Yeah. There's some things that I did. She was like, "Really? How did they let you do that?"
You could watch The Simpsons.
Exactly. Yeah, I could watch The Simpsons. And so my parents were very strict when it came to especially video games, but I think they were open-minded enough at that point that they kind of understood how much I loved them and how much I enjoyed them. And my grandma, actually, whenever I would come over to her house, she had a Super Nintendo. She had she was like the best grandma, and she had a new game sitting for me every time I came over.
What an amazing grandma. Holy crap, my heart right now.
Yeah. And so my dad was the one that got me my first regular Nintendo, the NES. And I don't think he understood what fire he was setting underneath me when he did that, but he does now. So yeah, I grew up in a really strict house, but I think I had a little bit of leeway when it came to things like that to just at least try it because my parents knew how much I was enjoying it. There were I went through a lot of arguments about like the amount of time I was putting into it, but I was getting everything else I needed to done. Like I was being social, I was hanging out with friends, I was doing well in school, I was in sports. Like I did all the normal quote unquote things to keep your parents happy, but then every other minute I was spending playing games, and a lot of that was Counterstrike.
Was it the PvP aspect, or did you like being immersed in another world?
Both. That's why I love Final Fantasy so much. That was my other world game. I could just play Final Fantasy and like Chrono Cross, Chrono Trigger, all those games. Those were my big ones to just kind of like escape. And I'm a hugely competitive person, and that's where Counter-Strike really hit the nail. It was something that I could practice. I even got to the point of there were cheaters in Counter-Strike, big surprise. And I would practice against cheaters because that was kind of like the aim labs of today, where I was making sure that I was playing against people that were shooting me through walls, so I can understand how to shoot people through walls and shoot them back where they were.
Oh, so you were counterattacking them, and you were learning their tactics.
Yeah, and they were moving so fast that I had to aim, like I had to flick aim a lot. So they were speed hacking, and I was trying to shoot them as they were speed hacking and aimbotting me, and it was my way of aim training. I didn't care how many times I died. If I killed someone, that was like really good, and then I would figure out what worked and what didn't, move on. But I would spend so many hours doing stuff like that and like just kind of practicing before the whole competitive scene was even a thing.
How old were you?
I was 8th grade.
Yeah, I was going to say 12, 13. Yeah, because, oh my God, that's such a fascinating age to be exposed to that and then challenge your brain to be doing that. I was doing some reading about just like, I don't know, I was trying to share some stuff with my parents a long time ago, and they were just like, what is Twitch? Is it Pornhub? You know? And I'm like, it's not. But I was like,
it's trying to be at a certain level.
I was showing them studies and journals, like medical journals, talking about how you can heal brain trauma with video games. You can train skills, cognitive thinking, and problem solving with video games. And maybe the video games now are much more different than the ones we had when we were younger. But I'm always such an advocate for, like, we have a privilege of being able to sharpen our thinking, figure out cause and effect thinking, you know, and there's so many things available to us. And the fact that you were doing that at 13, 14, 15, and then you got into the competitive scene, it's almost like you were in the right place at the right time. And I feel like today your brain is so it's on another level than maybe someone else that didn't have those opportunities.
And there's a lot of times I'll play, you know, like those finding games. So it's like kind of like Where's Waldo, but on those bar machines.
Yeah.
Where you like on the screen what's different between the two pictures.
And then you see, yeah, because you can,
I can do that really fast, and I'm really good at it. And people are like, "How do you do? How?" And I was like, "That's I guarantee you because of Counterstrike and games
absolutely because of Counterstrike.
Pixel changes, I realize it and I react to it. You know.
Yep. When I'm trying to teach people, like there's some people in my clan or Discord that aren't like the freshest with Destiny. So I always talk about it like if someone has a driver's license, that's such a good way to translate playing games, especially PvP games or any competitive games really, because you have to train your eyes to look in a similar way you would have trained your eyes to look at a windshield, you know, look for danger, look for people crossing, and then once you get those patterns down, then everything is so much more seamless.
As a new dad, I think going to your question, this is pretty biased, but I would fully support anything if my daughter wanted to get into games. I would fully support her. Obviously that would be between me and my wife and like what makes sense, but I think today's world there's a lot more validation for just the whole gaming industry in general, at multiple levels. I always said that I was born 10 years too early, because if I was in high school or college right now, I'd be trying out for the teams, I'd be trying out for scholarships, like just getting into colleges and playing on their esports teams, whatever the game is.
There's
like,
actual scholarships now. Was not a conversation when you weren't competing, it was like you were in like the almost like the black market of like gaming, where it's like a new thing where it was evolving and not everybody did it or knew about it. And now it's like it's a household conversation that if your kid is good at video games, maybe they'll get a scholarship,
because not every kid's going to be good at sports, not every kid's going to be good at music. Like they might be good at video games, and it's something that they can actually cultivate and make into something pretty cool and real. And it's not like you're not labeled a huge nerd. Like the whole term nerd's different. Like I didn't give a shit about being called a nerd.
I feel like you have a very strong sense of self in who you are. I feel like that word wouldn't have shaken you. No,
but like the connotation today is so much different than it was back then. It's just awesome. This is the way it should be. Like being a nerd's cool now versus being a nerd back then, you know?
Yeah, nerd you'd get pushed into lockers back then. Yeah. I was a drama geek. I was a performance geek. So being a Twitch streamer was just the natural evolution for me.
No, that makes sense. No one knew that I was a gamer until I told them. They were like, "Wait, you game?" Because I was into sports and all the other stuff, so I could hide it pretty well. But like, I was never shameful of it. I was like, "Yeah, hell yeah, I play games like 8 hours a day."
Did anybody on your teams, were they gamers too? And then when you brought that up, they were like, "Oh my god, why aren't we playing together?"
Yeah. And so this is going to be a quick side story, but a couple of my best friends today, this is starting out in high school. One of my friends, it was a girl, was dating the other guy. They went to a different school, a different high school. And she realized that I was a gamer, and she was like, wait a minute, because they were both gamers too. And she was like, you guys need to meet. You'd be such good friends. So she set us up on a blind man date at a cafe. And so we sat down.
Was it an internet cafe?
No, it was an actual cafe.
Okay.
And so we had some food, talked, and then we went back to my buddy's basement. His dad worked in IT at the state, so we had 3 computers in his basement that were hooked up. We went back to his house and played World of Warcraft together, and now we're best friends. They were all in my wedding.
That's the beauty of gaming. That is like the more I'm in this sphere, the more I'm in this culture, the more I'm understanding like none of this would have happened in the 90s. In the decades we grew up, this was not a thing. You couldn't have imagined being friends with somebody, and like they were in the same city as you, so that's a little bit luckier. But like someone that I've been connected to is friends with someone else I've been connected to, and I just figured that out where they were like commenting on each other's posts. It's a little bit different than what you were talking about, but it's still like stuff like that, as simple as it is, it blows my mind. He was the best man at your wedding.
He was not my best man, but he was in my wedding.
Okay, that's insane, you know? That's just so heartwarming.
A lot of people that came to my wedding were people that I met through competitive Counter-Strike and just gaming in general. It's wild.
That just makes my heart like I have the hugest smile on my face right now. It's just like that makes me so happy, because what you see happening when you're gaming with somebody, even though it's very, very stressful sometimes, like if you're doing a raid in Destiny or you're learning a new thing in another game, you're bonding together, you're growing that relationship together, and it's really important. And as you evolve, you'll check in with each other every day. You'll say, hey, and I have people in my life now that I've met through gaming that I'm like, yeah, you'll be at my wedding, not a question. You know, like these relationships are just as valid as relationships that you make in person.
Yeah, what was bad about the time when I was going through it all, and this is like a lot of the conversations I had with my parents, was like the whole catfishing thing and people getting abducted. Like that was big, because AOL chat rooms were a thing where people were catfishing, and I was like, yes, this could be totally illegitimate, but this is something I'm going to take a risk on. And it was a lot of really hard conversations, but they eventually let me start going out and meeting some of these people and playing in some of these events. And then they saw that it was just like, it was a thing, and then it kind of just got easier from there. Yeah,
it was like they had to test the waters a little bit.
I think they just realized how much time I spent with these people and how they stayed like a consistent person for literally years.
Yeah, like when you keep bringing them up in conversation, then they understand like this person is really consistent, and clearly they're impacting your life in some way.
Yeah, right, exactly. So yeah, it was just a much different catfish world back then than it is now.
Oh yeah, that's actually like sidebar, that's my favorite show. I know it's hot garbage, but it's so good to watch. So you talked a little bit about this earlier. You talked about like being able to spot the difference in games, and just being really good at PvP. But I really want to hear about the skills that you gained from being a competitive Counter-Strike player for 15 years, and how you've channeled those skills you gained there into your everyday life now as a content creator.
As a content creator, well, I could also say into like my career that I had. I worked in healthcare IT for a long time, and like kind of worked my way up through different leadership roles and stuff like that. Worked at a healthcare IT startup for a little while and helped get them off the ground operationally and that kind of thing. So a lot of those leadership skills, because I was the in-game lead and I formed some different teams and stuff throughout Counter-Strike, my Counter-Strike career, like it taught me a lot of skills in recruiting and managing people and setting up times and just kind of getting people together for tournaments, practices, staying consistent, like all those types of things. It taught me a lot about what it was like to be an adult. I told people in interviews about my Counter-Strike teams. My first job that I got out of college, I worked at Epic Systems, which was a huge electronic medical record. And they, as part of the interview process, they said, give us a 15-minute interview about anything. It's like, anything? Seriously? Like, yeah, sure. Because they were a pretty progressive company, a young company, that kind of thing. And so I gave them a presentation on the competitive esports industry and kind of what it was like growing up and how it evolved. And the people that were sitting in the room after I got done with the presentation were like, no shit. Like, this is a thing? They were like, this is the coolest thing I never knew about.
Oh my God. Oh, you must have felt so cool.
It felt nice. It really did. So yeah, it's just like, there's a lot of things that I've kind of adapted to myself as a person that I've continued to hone in different ways throughout my career, throughout my life. And most of them are around like leadership, staying consistent, determination, failing,
it sounded really disciplined.
Yeah, a lot of discipline for sure.
That like every one of your answers is just knocking me out of the park. These are so cool, you know, like it.
I'm just glad I get to share them. This feels cool. It really does.
Good. So okay, now I lost where we were. You talked about you being naturally competitive. Okay. Oh my God, you answered the question.
Did I answer the other ones?
No,
no,
it's totally okay. So I want to talk about you being naturally competitive. What does this mean? Because I'm someone that's quite passive and I hate conflict. So what is try to explain to me like I'm 5 what it feels like to be competitive.
I wouldn't say so. I think there's a difference between being competitive and being aggressive. Like there's aggressive and passive. But I think they kind of all interrelate. But like there usually is a little bit more aggression in someone that's competitive, right? Because being competitive to me is you're trying to do everything you possibly can to win or be really good at what you're doing. to a point where you are better than the next person. And there's always, like, the cliche is there's always someone better out there. But I think there's like people like Tiger Woods or Tom Brady or people that are literally the best at what they do.
Like the top of their industry.
They're so competitive that they, like, people like that say, I kept going until there was literally no one else better than me.
Yeah.
And that's like the top level of competition is you have so much drive and competitive spirit that you want to be, and you try to figure out every way to make it happen to be better than everyone else. And so for me, like, I'm a competitive person. Whenever I'm doing something, I want to make it the best that I possibly can for me.
Do you have a criteria that you have to meet in your head when you know that you've succeeded in this? And I think that's a good question to give our viewers, that maybe they have this competitive spirit, but they are having a hard time. Maybe they don't know that they're not getting enough sleep, or it's stuff like that, you know? Is there anything that you could share like that?
Yeah. And I think content creation, it's really hard to be competitive in content creation.
So unique, right?
It's so unique, and it's all about numbers, and the number could always be higher.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you look at people even like XQC, like he has 150,000 people watching him. There's someone that had 300,000 people watching him for a league stream. Like,
there's always going to be someone better than you in that moment, what you're trying to do.
Exactly. So I don't know. I think being competitive is good in terms of, like, you try to always analyze what you're doing, what you could be doing better, what you are doing well, and then trying to just grow yourself as a content creator in whatever that is. But like, being overly competitive, I feel like, is where a lot of content creators get, just like, they start getting hard on themselves. And I do this, like, you start getting so hard on yourself and so overcritical, you just start going down like that depression hole. And, like,
oh yeah, I do that all the time. I did that yesterday.
Yeah, so it's a real thing. Like, I'm pretty sure every content creator ever has gone down some type of depression hole and, like, self-doubt and stuff like that. So it's, for me, it's something that's, you will always want to try to keep healthy, but it's different from person to person, and, like, the goals that you're trying to hit, you know?
Yeah, and, like, I think having a big view of what is realistic in this moment, you know, like, it's not realistic to get yourself a giant camera when you just started your content creator journey, you know? So you don't need to have the best things. You don't need to have cutting edge everything. Bit by bit, piece by piece, you might one day have the best setup. You might one day have the best KD ratio, you know? But it's the things that having your priorities straight about what you want to focus on. I have to constantly remind myself almost every day, where I'm like, okay, what is my focus? What am I doing? What am I trying to do? You know? Yeah.
And a lot of people will compare themselves to other content creators that do it full time, and whether that full-time person is full-time because they are well off, like they have a trust or whatever with all kinds of money.
Yeah. That was my first thought. Yeah.
So, or it's someone that has actually made it to the point where they can, like, leave the job that they're in and then just take it on full time. And that's, I feel like if you're in that life position where you're older, you have a job, you have a family, like, you have all these other priorities outside of it, and you're trying to do content creation, to just do it as a hobby. Like, everyone says this at this point now, but it's definitely true. You do it as a hobby, you try to focus on as much as you can, but you don't do it to the point where you're sacrificing the family, you're sacrificing work, all that kind of stuff. And if it takes off, and like, your income starts hitting the same level or damn near close, and you can live a comfortable life without your job, and then you go full-time content creation, great, go for it. They're like, my buddy above just did that.
Oh, congrats to him. That must be so exciting.
Yeah. Yep. So that is a thing, but there's also some people that just go with one average viewer, they go full time, and they just they're not prepared. They're younger and they're living with their parents. That's different. But if you're older and you just leave your job to go do content creation because that's what you want to do, and you don't have a backup safety net, not obviously, it just logically doesn't make sense.
Yeah, if you have dependents on you, and like, if there's loans you have to pay off, because the curse of life, sometimes I Let's call it that. Being an adult, you accumulate some debt. Yeah, but it's understanding the position in life you're in objectively. I think that I think every year that I have getting older, the more I'm realizing like I become more and more objective of the life that I have and what I need to do to make it better, what can change. And when I was 25, I did not look at my life that way. It was just like, what's the most fun thing to do right now? Let's go out on a Friday night, right? And now I'm just like trying to work to get finances under control, plan for my future. And I feel like you just can't do that in your early 20s. You're not, maybe you're not capable of it yet.
Yep. And to go back to just kind of the being a content creator and comparing yourselves to others, it just it doesn't make sense because everyone's situation is different. You could be comparing yourself to a kid that is still at home and doesn't have many responsibilities at all outside of school, and they can do it for 15 hours a day, and they're grinding, they're just going, and they hit it. They say they hit partner, whatever your goal is, but they have a lot less to worry about, and they can focus on that versus someone that's like mid 20s, 30s that's just trying to get into content creation with a lot of other worries and things that they need to do. So
it's like when you're in that age, when you're in your early 20s, you can just, that's why you see these 17, 18, 19-year-old influencers that are raking in so much money because they have the privilege of not worrying about their rent, not worrying about certain bills to pay. I'm not questioning their journey because like that has its own challenges and its current challenges and challenges they'll encounter as they age. But I mean, I definitely say that I'm not a full-time content creator. I make YouTube content and I do my best to Twitch stream when I can, but I have other responsibilities. I have a dog I have to take care of. I have bills I have to pay, and I have a house to keep clean. You know what I mean? So it's just stuff like that you take for granted when you're a lot younger.
You really do. You really do. And if like, again, I'm born 10 years too early. Like if I was in my late teens, mid 20s right now, I'd be going so hard on all the content creation stuff. Like, do you think that the person you were when you were that age, do you think that you would see the opportunities in front of you? Yes, because I saw it with like CPL and the different online leagues and stuff that were going on. There was a lot of potential in the gaming world, and that's why I got so invested in it. So yeah, I think today if I'm still the same person now as I was then at that age, I think so. That's so definitely I would have tried to be like who's the good like Shroud. I feel like in the last few years, I think he's done a wonderful job in growing himself as a person and as a content creator. Yeah, and he's given himself like the rainbow as a content creator instead of just being one thing. He's expanded really well. Yeah. So I feel like he's a really good example of a good person that's insanely good at games, that does really good content. Like watching him is actually really entertaining. Yeah. So I probably would have modeled myself after him if I was his age at that point. I want to hear what you're hoping to accomplish as a content creator. What are your goals? There's a lot of them. Okay. The big goal that I want to accomplish is to create something where a lot of people can learn a lot of things. You really like educating. I do. I'm not like and this is going to sound bad, but I know me. I'm not a super funny, like I can't get a lot of people viewing because I'm like hilarious and I'm super entertaining. So that's why I've kind of gone more on the like focusing more on education and just trying to put the best production value out as I can. Yeah, and, like, that was one of the first things I noticed was your camera. When I think this is like months and months ago, I popped into your stream for the first time. I was like, oh, Iceman, what's this guy about? And I was like amazed at your camera. And it's like, that's one of the things that has always stuck out to me is you have the bokeh effect. And I'm like, I want to do that. It's a nice thing to have, but I think in today's world in content, people want things that are funny. People really look for, especially with like TikTok and a lot of short content. They're not really looking for educational content. There's a small little niche market for that, but the wide variety or the wider market is more based around just like kind of loud, boisterous, funny content. That attention grabbing, the gratification content. Someone that's loud in your face. If they're funny, great. But that's kind of what people want right now, and that's totally fine. I mean, that's great for the people that can meet that, but that's not me.
Yeah, but that's
so
good because you know that you can't give that product out, and so you're gonna work on the other skills to maybe focus more on a niche.
Yep, exactly. And the hard part is just finding exactly where that niche is that hasn't already been satisfied.
Yep.
So the goal for me is I would love to hit partner on Twitch, but who knows if Twitch is going to be a thing in 2 years. So
it's hard to not pay attention, right?
Right. I want to try to provide content across a lot of platforms and hit good, like, sustainable levels on different platforms. YouTube being like the mainstay. I think YouTube's going to be around no matter what.
Oh yeah. YouTube's been here.
Really
what grade were you in when YouTube came out?
I'd say 7th.
You were in 7th grade.
6th, 7th grade, something like that, I think.
Yeah, okay, hold on. Cause the first time I heard of YouTube, I was in grade 8, but that doesn't mean that was the year it came out. I think YouTube came out in the early 2000s?
2005. Oh, it came out in 2005? Okay, so I would have been a senior in high school.
Yeah. Cause then if I was in junior high, you would have been in high school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's crazy. And like, think about Netflix. Netflix came out in 1997. Like,
it's killing me. Absolutely killing me right now.
I know. Well, when I was looking up Counterstrike, I was like, that's a word I've had in my vernacular since I was like a child, and I'm just like, cool. So it's been out for 20 years.
Yeah. Well, so this is a ridiculous aside that made me super depressed when someone said it in chat. My Steam profile. Yeah. There's like an age of your Steam profile. I got Steam.
Oh no.
My Steam ID could have sold for thousands of dollars.
Oh, is it a shorter one?
It's 7757.
Okay.
I was the 7,757th person to register for Steam and get an account. My
God.
Account is older than people in my chat. The person in chat was like, that's actually a year older than me. I was like, are you kidding? I had to stand up and walk away for a little bit.
I had a little bit of a similar, just to continue this aside, because it's quite funny. I had one of my friends that carried me to the lighthouse in Destiny. We were talking about Quentin Tarantino the other day, and we were just gonna chat with my boyfriend and him, and we were just talking about Inglourious Bastards. And
love that movie.
I love that movie. It's so good. And I was in my first year of college in broadcasting school when that movie came out. And my friend said, "Oh, I was 8 years old when that movie came out." And I was like, "I'm not talking to you for a long time." I can't even take myself to the lighthouse. I was like, "Can you help me? You're 18."
Yep. There's so much more of that every day, or I'm just like, I'm definitely actually old at this point.
But I think what's actually like, to do a little bit of a segue, what's so funny, and the reason that we're laughing so much is like we have such nostalgic memories about the games that shaped us and the games that made us who we are. And Counterstrike, even though I didn't play it, was one of those games, and I think that it's just so fascinating, the evolution that we've had of gaming and technology, and how I think about the Destiny economy, and that would not be how it is today without Counter-Strike.
Oh yeah, and I think there's a lot of games that have taken a lot of pieces from Counter-Strike and adapted them into their own. So it's unreal to just know how far Counter-Strike itself has come as a game, and it's still relevant today, which is there's really no other game out there except for maybe Halo that can say that. I
would agree with that perspective. That was maybe one of the first games that incorporated the campaign plus PvP together. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. Well, GoldenEye. I feel like GoldenEye.
That was my next thought. I was like, there's got to be a Nintendo one that was like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think GoldenEye was really like the start for a lot of FPS games. And it's GoldenEye is still relevant today. A lot of people speedrun it on.
Oh, I was thinking of that. I was thinking of someone that I watched recently speedrun it on YouTube, and I'm just like, wow, I can't do that.
So it's wild to see just how games build upon each other, and then there's those small handful that stay relevant over decades. And it's a special thing for sure. And I can't think of it. The last game to do that, and I think will do that, is probably League of Legends.
Yep.
Because they were the ones that really nailed MOBAs. They kind of created the category along with Dota. And they have taken the Counterstrike esports and took it to a whole different level. They are the ones that I think Riot Games they know how to do esports.
Riot Games is capitalizing on that monopoly. I admire the F out of that company because of what they've done for esports.
They took esports and took it up to the next rung on the ladder and took it to the next level. And I don't know what game will be the ones after them to do that, but there's not one out right now that I can think of to do that. They've kind of set the bar higher with Valorant. I think they're going to be the ones to do it again, but in Valorant.
It's funny because I haven't even touched Valorant. And I remember when it was just that you just get a code for it. It was like a secret access code, and everyone on Twitch was playing it, and Pokemon was playing it when it just came out. And it was, what did they say? It was a CS:GO mixture with Overwatch. Was that what the comparison was? Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yep. And it's a lot of people love it, and the younger generation, like me back then with Counter-Strike, are those kids now with Valorant. And
that's so exciting.
They're taking gaming to the next level. It's nuts. Like, if you watch someone like Tens play, it's unreal. Just watching how fast they are in reaction time and how accurate they are. And obviously the hardware, like I was using a mouse ball at the time.
I forgot about the mouse balls. Yeah.
And it was really hard to be accurate when you're rolling around a mouse ball. But now they have like these professional skates that you can put on the bottom of your mouse for like ultra precision sliding. Like just the amount of technology that goes into gaming now is unreal. And
do you think that macros are like, I don't know a lot about macros, but I know that it's like something in Destiny where you can switch your weapons really quick on your mouse ball. Are those allowed in game in esports? No,
you get bans immediately.
Yeah, and it makes complete sense because it's not, that tool is not made for that.
Yeah, I mean, there should be nothing but human interaction in a competitive esports game. There should be nothing that's like scripted at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that in the next 10 years we'll have this same discussion about Counter-Strike?
Right?
It's really interesting, right?
I think with Valorant here now, they always said it was a Counter-Strike killer, and it's doing it right now. Counter-Strike kind of needs to reinvent itself again. Go's been out for 6 years now, 7, 8. I don't know. It's going on a lot of years, and it needs to reinvent itself now in order to stay competitive because Valorant is taking off, and I think Valorant's going to probably take the spot of Counter-Strike,
take the empire over,
which is sad, but I mean it's almost time.
Yeah, and like, you know, we were talking, he's 20 years old, and you know, the lifetime of this game, you think about Halo's lifetime, and what, like, they say that when a game comes out, it has a 10-year lifespan typically. And, you know, you have the DLCs, you have the newer games that come out. But if it's been 6 years since the last CS game came out, then it is time to either hang up the hat or reinvent yourself.
Yep. And a lot of the really good employees from Valve that worked on Counter-Strike stuff, the map designer was old 3D Volcano, Sal Garozzo. And he was a genius. He essentially made the maps that are the best maps in competitive Counter-Strike ever, and he made them by himself. He was a modder, and he just made the maps. And Valve caught on. Was like, oh,
was that when they were modding Half-Life?
Yeah. Well, this was in 1.6.
Okay.
And so they kind of had like, you were able to design maps. They had a map design tool.
Right.
And the community would design different maps, and this guy. He designed maps that were next level and really good, and then you could play them, and they played perfectly. Cash was probably one of the most iconic maps in Counter-Strike and will be forever. And he's the one that made it. That was his first big map that put him, like, for lack of a better word,
put him on the map.
And then he signed on with Valve and started making more maps from there.
He just knew that economy. He knew what players needed. He knew the crouch spots. I think, and that takes a very different eye. It's good that he was a player as well, because he knew from his perspective what he would want.
Yep. And if you talk to people that play Valorant, they're just like, the maps are so good, and that's him.
And he designed the maps in Valorant.
He's the map lead for him. He has a full team that does it now, but he's like the guy.
That's so exciting.
So it's wild. And if you have people like him that are on your team and he's on the leadership team, you know things are going to get done well.
Well, and I can understand now when you say that you think that CS might hang up the hat because of the team that designed the best parts of CS are working on Valorant. If there's something that you learned that you wish you knew when you got started, or any piece of advice that you want to share with someone that's trying to understand the playing field of content, feel free to share it.
Yeah, and I think this is a thing a lot of people say now. But when I first got started, it's hard to get started. And going back to what you said about the equipment and stuff like that, you can get a decent setup for pretty cheap. And you can go online. There's a lot of free resources now, a lot more than when I started, where you can get free overlays, you can get free camera stuff, and you can kind of just mix and match things. And when I first started, I bought like a $15 set of cam overlay stuff and then just adapted in some other things and kind of made it my own. But it was cheap, and I used that for a while. And then as the stream grew, I started just making things better and investing some money here and there, because it is a business. At the end of the day, you're literally starting a business. So you have to reinvest in it. You have to try to think about how you can do it better, reimagine it, that kind of stuff. But try to create on as many platforms as possible. Trying to stream only, you have to get really lucky to take off. You have to be insanely good at the game. You have to be already on an organization that can put your name out there, or you're already known. Or you just get really lucky and you know people. Like, this is an example, but just like a hypothetical example. But like, say you're just like best friends with Dr. Lupo and you play with him every day. That's gonna get you out there to tens of thousands of people every day. So you don't really have to. You don't have to go out and connect with people. Networking is a huge part of content creation. You don't have to go out and market yourself in different sources and put a lot of content out there. But most of the time, you have to do that. And you have to think about the different platforms and the different types of content you can put out on those different platforms that are around you and your brand, as you want to call it. Like,
figuring out your brand too, right? Like understanding the impact that you want to make and seeing the responsibility of that. I think, just to add to what you just said, is definitely important.
Yeah. So there's a lot to it. You almost have to like write your own business plan before you
do. I did that.
I can tell you came from like a business world background, and the broadcasting background made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true though. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done.
You love it though.
Yeah, I do.
Iceman, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. I can't wait for everyone to hear your advice and your worldview and your perspective and experience playing in esports competitively, as well as growing your brand and business as a content creator. It's been so much fun having you on today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
No worries, my dude. We'll talk soon.
All right.